I see people are joining. Welcome everyone to this information session on building equitable economies for immigrants and refugees. As you join us, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat box with your name and organization. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We are very excited to launch this new funding opportunity to build more equitable economies for immigrants and refugees. My name is Mariam Berube, and I'm a consulting director at the Tamarack Institute, and I have been supporting this participatory grant-making project since the beginning. I would like to thank my colleagues from the Tamarack team that are on the call today. Connor is our tech support. If you are experiencing any technical issues, please feel free to contact him in the chat box. I'd like to thank my colleagues as well from the WES Mariam Assefa Fund and the Peel Newcomer Strategy Group that are joining us today as well. I will now pass it on to Karen Veer-Panu, my colleague. If you want to tell us a few words about yourself and then start us well with our land acknowledgement.
Hi everyone, my name is Karen Veer-Panu and I recently joined the Tamarack team to support this project in Peel. I'm very excited to be here and to be in community with you all. Before we begin, we'd like to ground this presentation with an acknowledgement. We begin this session by acknowledging that we are meeting on Indigenous land as settlers. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet, and we thank all generations of Indigenous people who have taken care of this land. I'm calling in from the Peel region, which is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. In particular, I'd like to acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe Chippewa peoples, the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. As settlers, this recognition of the contribution and historic importance of Indigenous people must clearly and overtly be connected to our collective commitment to truth and reconciliation. Next slide. Next, I'd like to quickly go over the agenda for today. We'll begin with an introduction, introducing you to our team of partners. Next, we'll discuss our design process, so explaining our participatory grant-making model and introducing you to our people's panel. We'll then talk more specifically about the funding opportunity, introducing you to our objective and priorities. We'll then go over the available funding streams and details about the application process itself, such as who can apply, how to apply, how will funding decisions be made. We'll end off by discussing important dates and next steps, and then move into a Q&A session. So just in the interest of time, we ask that you save your questions until the end of the session. You may also leave them in the chat box as we move through the presentation, and we can revisit them during the Q&A session. Also, as we move through the presentation, we ask that you keep yourselves muted until we approach the Q&A session. So I'll pass it to Mariam.
Thank you, Karen Veer. Next slide, please. So the WES Mariam Assefa Fund has partnered with the Tamarack Institute to launch this participatory grant-making project in one Ontario community in 2022. And the Peel Newcomer Strategy Group applied for the Peel community that was selected last fall to take part in this very innovative project. And we work together to engage the Peel community in the People's Panel that co-designed this funding opportunity. I won't tell you more about the People's Panel. I see that several of the members are on the call, and my colleague Natalia in a few moments will be able to tell you more about it. If you want to learn more about the partners in this project, we invite you to please visit our website at tamarackcommunity.ca. Next, please. What is special about this project is that participatory grant-making cedes the decision-making power about funding from foundation staff, in this case, the WES Mariam Assefa Fund, to the very communities that funders aim to serve. So this is a process that privileges the experiences and the needs of the community. It values community members as subject matter experts. And the role of Tamarack, my role, Karen Veer, in this process is really to facilitate and support the work of the People's Panel. And we believe that by experiencing participatory grant making, we will bring about more effective and responding funding solutions to the needs of the community. Next, please. So about the People's Panel, I will now invite Natalia Durango, who's a member of the panel. Well, first, Natalia, to tell us a few words about yourself and your motivation to take part in the panel, and then explain like the very hard work and incredible work that the People's Panel has done so far. So on to you, Natalia.
Thank you, Mariam and Karen Bean, and thank you everybody for being here today. It's really exciting to be at this point of all these activities that, as Mariam is saying, we have been doing volunteering since the last fall. As she mentioned, my name is Natalia Durango. I have been living in the region of Peel for the last 13 years. I came as a refugee from Colombia, and I personally know the challenges that we immigrants or refugees can face when we come to a new country to start a life from scratch. That experience can be reflected in some other people from the People's Panel, who are also people with lived experience, who came to Canada for different reasons, have been living in the region of Peel and understand the challenges and the opportunities that are available in the region of Peel, but also because we have been working with the community. Personally, I have been working with the community for the last 10 years as a community worker and community health worker. So that opportunity has given me the capacity to be a first-hand observer of the kind of challenges and needs that refugees and newcomers are facing in the region of Peel. So this kind of experience and interest and passion for the community, which is reflected in all the diverse perspectives of the ones who are part of the People's Panel, brought us to this amazing opportunity. And what we have done in this multicultural and multi-background group is to provide feedback based on our personal and professional experience, and also because we are residents, as I mentioned, of the region of Peel, in order to co-design this funding opportunity to build equitable economies for immigrants and refugees. The panel members definitely have been sharing their lived experience and their knowledge within Peel to identify diverse needs and define priorities to create targeted change and impact that will different activities that can remove economic barriers for immigrants and refugees. During the different meetings that we had, we shared those concerns, and we were looking for compile all those experience of as immigrants and as a community workers to build this grant opportunity and take into account how we can support employment-focused efforts to empower and support marginalized immigrants and refugees in the region of Peel. And what I would like to highlight really is like, it was an opportunity for having together a diverse of perspectives, different backgrounds, different experiences as immigrants and refugees, but especially the passion and the commitment to bring an opportunity that can support marginalized immigrants in the region. We really enjoy and we appreciate the opportunity to express our experiences and being able to provide this opportunity based on our knowledge on the real needs that are impacting immigrants and refugees in the region of Peel.
Thank you so much, Natalia. And I really want to highlight the incredible work and the commitment of the People's Panel throughout this process. Thank you, Natalia. I think Najma from the People's Panel is here with us today, and perhaps a few more members as well. So thank you for being with us on this call. Karen Veer, I will pass it on to you again. Next slide, please.
Next, I'd like to go over our objective. This objective for our funding opportunity was co-created and co-designed by our People's Panel. Together, they've decided that this fund aims to support employment-focused efforts towards serving and empowering marginalized immigrants and refugees that offer holistic, responsive, and collaborative solutions that are grounded in the Peel community to remove economic barriers and build more equitable economies. Underneath the objective, we've also provided a broad definition to how we've conceptualized the marginalization of immigrants and refugees, which we'd encourage you to read as you move through the application guidelines. Next slide. Next, I'd like to go over the identified priorities for our funding opportunity. So our first priority is to engage industry and employers to position marginalized immigrants and refugees' skills to emerging labor market needs. Next, it is to develop entrepreneurship skills and job readiness while aiming for system change to create self-employment pathways for marginalized immigrants and refugees. Next, we have implement the holistic integration of mental health supports into settlement and employment services. And finally, align service navigation and accessibility to the marginalized immigrants and refugees' perspective and experiences. For example, this might include access to targeted and wraparound services to prevent and address issues that create barriers to employment. I want to emphasize that applicants are expected to address and respond to one or several of these priorities within their projects. I'll pass it back to Mariam.
Thank you, Karen. Next, please. So we have two available funding streams. The WES Mariam Assefa Fund has provided us with up to $600,000 in funding to be distributed in the Peel community by the People's Panel. So our first stream of funding is for single organization applicants applying with small scale projects. So these single organization projects can apply for grants in a range of $50,000 to $75,000. And our second stream is for joint applications. So from several organizations that will apply together with larger scale projects. And they can apply for grants ranging from $75,000 to $150,000. So we will ask you as applicant to clearly identify which stream you are applying to. We also want to highlight that this grant will be for 12 months. It is a pilot project that we are leading in the Peel area. So it starts on May 1st, 2022 and should end around April 30, 2023. Next, please. So who can apply to this fund? So it is really for the Peel community. So we are looking for Peel-based or Peel-serving nonprofit organizations, community agencies or groups, and collaboratives as well, whose work is related to workforce development or the immigrant and refugee settlement sector. We want this process to be as accessible as possible, but we would ask groups that are not registered charities to apply alongside a co-applicant who has a charitable or registration number and will serve as their fiscal sponsor. If by any way your organization is experiencing difficulties to find a fiscal sponsor, we please ask you to reach out to our team, and we will help you find a solution to make sure that you have access to the grant. Next, please. The collaborative dimension in this project is very important to the People's Panel and has been stressed throughout our discussions. So we encourage applicants to work in partnerships with community groups or grassroots initiatives that are reaching out to marginalized immigrants and refugees, and also to make sure that we develop strategies that are deeply rooted in the community's needs. We also encourage applicants to actively engage employers and industry in the process, especially small and medium-sized businesses, as the People's Panel really feels that engaging employer is a key part of the process for it to be transformative. And finally, to work collaboratively to develop projects and strategies that engage the diverse services and organizations that make up Peel's employment and settlement sector. Next, please. I'll pass it on to you, Karen.
So applications will be due on March 9th by 5 p.m. And to apply, you must complete the application form. And the link to our form can be found on our webpage. Underneath the Ready to Apply section, there's a button that reads Apply Now, and that will lead you directly to the application form. To complete your application, you'll be asked to provide some identifying and contact information. You'll also be asked to answer some long form questions. On the landing page of the form, so the first page of the application form, we've listed the long form questions, and we highly recommend that you complete the questions before starting the form, because you will not be able to save your progress once you've begun. To complete your application, you will also be expected to upload a completed project budget, your most recent financial statements, and your most recent activity report. On our website, we've attached a budget template for you to download and use. And on this template, we've also included a list of eligible and ineligible expenses. If you're submitting a collaborative application, so that's if you're a group of organizations working together to submit one larger funding request, we ask that only the main applicant applies on behalf of the group. And this means that only the main applicant will be required to upload their financial statement and activity report. If you are an unregistered organization and are applying with a fiscal sponsor, we ask that both the unregistered main applicant and the fiscal sponsor submit their financial statement and activity report. All these instructions and details are available on the landing page of our application form, so we'd recommend that you take some time reading these instructions before beginning the form. We can move to the next slide.
On funding decisions now. So as I mentioned earlier, the People's Panel will make funding decisions. So the panel will reconvene at the end of March 2022 to do this. So this is not the WES Mariam Assefa Fund or the Tamarack Institute making the decision. We are supporting the People's Panel to make those decisions. And it's very important to us that this process be fair, legitimate, and transparent and accountable to the Peel community. So we will ask the People's Panel's member to declare any real or perceived conflict of interest that they may have with a potential grantee, or in the case that their own organization decides to apply to this funding opportunity, we will ask them to step down from the grant-making decision process. And feel free to address us if you have any concern about how the decisions will be made for this fund. Next, please. So the People's Panel will assess each application that we receive based on how they respond to the following criteria. So I will give you some highlight on each of those criteria, but you can find more details in the application guidelines that Karen will just put in the chat box. So we are looking for projects that are relevant with respect to the intention of these funding opportunities and that respond to the recognized needs of marginalized immigrants and refugees, and that in a holistic approach. We are also looking for alignment with the objectives of this funding opportunity. So as Karen Veer mentioned, each project has to respond to at least one of our 4 funding priorities and propose relevant strategies and responsive solutions. We want this work to be grounded in equity. So we look for projects that will foster equity and also consider intersectionality in the project. And we have attached a glossary to our frequently asked questions if you want to have more information on how we define equity, intersectionality, impact, and all the language that we use in our guidelines is defined in the glossary. So feel free to have a look at it. In terms of impact, we are looking for projects that will define clear, measurable, and realistically achievable results in the 1-year time frame that we have. We are looking for projects that will foster engagement and collaboration with immigrants and refugees and within the Peel community, so within the sector of the workforce sector and the immigrant and refugee settlement sector. And finally, accountability. We're looking for projects that will incorporate processes that emphasize accountability and transparency to all stakeholders involved. And the way that we approach accountability is, for example, this can be achieved through engagement and a participatory approach to decision-making to make sure that all stakeholders are consulted and heard in the decisions that affect them, which is very much aligned with the spirit of this participatory grant-making project. Next, please.
So some important upcoming dates: on February 15th from 1 to 2 p.m. and on March 1st from 12 to 1 p.m. we'll be hosting drop-in coaching calls. So this is an opportunity for you to drop in and ask your project-specific questions. As mentioned, the deadline is March 9th at 5 p.m. and we'll be informing grantees of our decision on April 22nd at the latest. Could we go to the next slide? So once again, I encourage you all to go to our website and spend some time with the application guidelines. We've also uploaded some additional resources such as a budget template and an FAQ and glossary. The FAQ and glossary is meant to support your reading and understanding of this funding opportunity. And again, the application form itself can be found on this webpage as well. And if you have any questions or concerns as you move through this application process, I'd encourage you to send an email to myself so we can direct you to solutions or answers. We're going to move into our Q&A portion of the session. If you have a question you'd like to ask, we'd encourage you to raise your hand. Alternatively, you may also write your questions in the chat box and I can read them out loud. To be mindful of time, we also ask that you keep your comments and questions short. And as you ask questions, we also invite you to turn your camera on so we can have more of a discussion.
Thank you very much, Karen Veer. So we can leave the PowerPoint presentation now. And as Karen Veer invited us to, if you feel comfortable, please turn on your camera so that we can have more of a conversation. So Karen Veer, would you like to guide us through the Q&A session? I see that there is a question in the chat box. And if people want to ask questions, please raise your hand with the function in the Zoom menu.
The question in the chat box says, do you have a paper copy of the application we can download before filling it out online?
This is not something that is provided right now on the website, but is definitely something that we could do. We could upload a Word document so that you can have access to the questions, but then we would still ask you to please submit it online because it will make it a lot easier for the people's panel to analyze. So once you have filled out your answers, we would ask you to copy and paste them, please, in the online form. But if you have any accessibility issue with the online form, please also feel free to reach out to Karen Veer or myself, and we'll help you out with the form. Okay, so I see that will be helpful if we can provide Word document with questions. So yeah, we'll do that. That's an excellent suggestion. We'll make sure to add this. Any more questions from the guidelines that we have presented? Don't be shy. All questions are good questions. I see a question from Efat. Would you like to turn on your camera and?
Sure. Yes, hi everyone. Listen, Mariam, this is not question related to the application. You said it all and then it's very clear. But I have very interesting question about WES Mariam is that Mariam
Assefa
Assefa?
Fund.
Yeah, I want to I want to know just one, two or three sentences about her. Why we carry the name of Mariam after WES, and then also why we carry Tamarack after, when institutions. I know this institution for many years, but all of a sudden this institution appeared in Peel, and I don't want to know why. So can you just tell us just a little bit of that? That's a history that brings an excitement to write things on the application. Thank you, Mariam.
Yeah, I would be happy to provide you with that. I'm just trying to open it up now. Who was Mariam Assefa? I don't know, Karen, if you would like to help me have a look at this. I have it right here. So just I tell you what I know about this. The WES is World Education Service. And the Maria Mesefa Fund is the philanthropic arm of the World Education Service that provides accreditation on diplomas internationally. Maria Mesefa herself, I'm looking to find exactly who she was. But it's a US-based foundation that is now entering Canada. Their main focus of work is definitely to remove economic barriers for immigrants and refugees, and to catalyze economic inclusion, opportunities, and mobility, both in the US and Canada. So they are looking for the reason why they embarked on this story, and we were lucky enough to have Marina Nouri, their program officer, in one of our previous sessions, telling us how important it is for the foundation to contribute to shifting power dynamics in the philanthropic world. And this is why they are trying for the first time this participatory grant-making approach, hoping to learn a lot from the process and also to inform the larger field of philanthropy. So they launched a call for proposal last year, and the Tamarack Institute had been working with them on a previous project and answered to the call for proposals. So Tamarack, as you know, Tamarack Institute is an organization that is working across Canada to end poverty. And we do that through community development and building capacity of change makers at the community level. So the reason why Tamarack embarked on this journey with the WES Mariam Assefa Fund is because of our experience and expertise in community engagement. So Tamarack is not a funder. Tamarack is an organization, an intermediary organization that catalyzes collective action and that plays that intermediary role to make sure that we really engage community members through authentic processes. So this is the reason why we partner with the Maria Mesefa Fund. And why Peel? Well, it was open to all Ontario communities, and among all the applications that we got, the one from Peel was clearly the most compelling. It was put forward by the Peel Newcomer Strategy Group. So this is a short story. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story, and that's a great marriage between Tamarack and WES. Funding from Mariam and our hero PNSG. Apply for that now. Yeah, there you are. Peel, go ahead. So maybe we'll just wait for amazing proposals to this wonderful, generous funding. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you.
Peel is really a pioneer in this process, and we really hope to learn from what is happening in Peel and from what all the stakeholders involved in the project to make sure that we can scale those learnings and share them with other communities as well. So
all the best to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I will put in the chat box who is Mariam Assefa so that you can know more about her. More questions, Karen?
I've included the link about Maria Mesefa. She was the executive director of WES for a very long time. And then she stepped down, and then they put together a fund in her honor. We have a question
for that.
We have a question from Maria, and it reads, if we are collaborating with another agency, is it required that the other agency should also be in Peel?
The focus of this work is really to serve the Peel community and to serve and empower marginalized immigrants and refugees that live in the Peel community. So I would say that it doesn't matter if the other organization is not located in Peel, as long as it is serving the Peel community. Yeah, so the impact we want to have is really in the Peel community. We will not, you will see in the eligible and ineligible expenses, we won't fund activities that are taking place outside of the Peel community. More questions?
There's one from May that reads, are asylum seekers part of the target groups?
Yes, definitely. We have adopted a very broad definition of marginalized immigrants and refugees. I think for the People's Panel, it was very important that this definition be inclusive of everyone that is experiencing barriers to economic opportunities. So yes, asylum seekers or how do you say, non-status immigrants as well are definitely part of the targeted groups.
And international students?
Yes, as well. More questions? Someone is saying that is the presentation slides be uploaded on the website? Yes, we can upload the slide deck, and we'll also send to all of you that registered, those of you who are attending today, but also all of those who registered and are not attending right now. We will be sending the presentation and recording, as Karen Vera put in the chat box. And the coaching calls are taking place on February 15 and March 1st. So as you go through the application process, if you have like specific questions about your project, your initiative, will be available for you with some members of the People's Panel as well to answer all your questions and to help you find solutions in case you experience any accessibility issue with this project. We still have time, lots of times. Don't be shy, all questions are good questions. I know, Jessica, that there, oh, I see Efat has another question. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Jessica, do you want to go ahead?
I'll have a question later, so you go ahead.
Efat. Okay, all right. As long as nobody's asking, I'm just asking my question. In a nutshell, Mariam, the road is really moving forward to employment, right? Whatever we do, so we provide or any kind of initiative or activity, it has to be ended to the employment. Is that something that you're looking for this funding application?
Yeah, it's really about like workforce development efforts. So we are really looking about economic opportunities, but the way the People's Panel envision it is in a holistic manner. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about, for example, embedding mental health services or wraparound services, is anything that will prevent marginalized immigrants and refugees from accessing good employment opportunities that needs to be addressed is also a key part of this project. So we don't have a key metric of like how many people will be employed like in 1 year at the end of this project. It's more about removing the obstacles. So if this is like, if some like targeted services are needed, whether for international students, asylum seekers, some of the groups that were mentioned by the people in the chat box, all of that are activities, as long as you can demonstrate that this will have an impact on providing better economic opportunities for these groups.
Perfect, thank you.
Jessica, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a similar question. And I know in the application guidelines, it speaks about some of the holistic supports. And I just know that, for example, some of the foundational issues for people towards employment are things like housing. So just wondering your thoughts on, would the funding be eligible towards some of those types of issues as well?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a very good question. I think, again, as far as the link towards employment is like demonstrated, the solutions, like the People's Panel has co-designed this funding opportunity, but it's really up to the community groups to define what the best solutions are to answer to those priorities. So, for example, in the fourth priority, when we talk about service navigation and accessibility, the example that is given there is to include access to targeted and wraparound services to prevent and address issues that create barriers to employment. So we talk about worker exploitation, housing needs, obtaining status for non-status immigrants. So we really define it largely, but this is not a funding opportunity to solve the housing crisis. I think we have to be clear on that. But if this is a main barrier to employment, and we can see the link and the impact that the project is going to have on removing these barriers, I would say that it's fine. And in case like the specific group have questions, like they can also come onto a coaching call and give us more precise examples of what they would like to do, and we can have a discussion around that. Does that answer your question, Jessica?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
I know in your group, there was also a question at the Peel Newcomer Strategy Group, I believe, table that I might share with this group as well. About on the website, we talk about existing programs versus new projects and programs. What I would like to clarify here is that what is important to the People's Panel is that we don't fund with this innovative opportunity things that are already well resourced, whether with government funding, philanthropic funding, United Way's funding, or else, right? We really want to have this fund provide an opportunity for innovation. So if this is building on existing programs, that is fine, but please in your application, make it very clear how you are scaling something to have a better reach to marginalized immigrants and refugees, or how you are trying to seed some innovation into some of the existing programs, or embedding mental health support within the work that you are doing in workforce development. So I think this is really the spirit behind when we talk about something new. It doesn't have to be something that has never been done before, but it's really about demonstrating how this will have a greater impact on marginalized immigrants and refugees opportunities. I see Natalia has her hand up, and there's also another question on admin costs in the chat box I will take just right after. Natalia?
Thank you, Mariam. Well, as a part of the People's Panel, I just would like to highlight some key words that can definitely inspire those who are planning to present proposals. What we were discussing is and I think the glossary that we are providing in the application form can explain this in better words, but words like holistic, empowerment, and innovation can tell us a lot of what we are looking for, but also understand the variety of populations that can fall under the category immigrants and refugees. We are looking for proposals that can definitely empower people and remove those barriers that are holding them from that success in their immigration process, rather if they are non-status immigrants who definitely are facing a lot of challenges in our community, and sometimes they don't even count in the statistics, or those, for example, who are refugee claimants who are also looking for different kind of supports to remove that barrier between the immigration process and the success of that immigration process. So innovation, empowerment, and holistic approach, I think are three key words that definitely can guide those who are planning to participate.
Thank you so much, Natalia, for bringing that up. This is extremely important to our whole process. About the question on administration cost, so we have listed among eligible expenses wages and benefits for existing or additional staff, fees for professional services, and you can find all of this in the frequently asked questions and the budget template and the application form, but I'm just mentioning them very quickly. Eligible expenditures include also materials and supply, printing, communication, data collection, evaluation and learning, equipment rental, lease maintenance, administration costs associated with the project. The only thing that we have topped is the percentage that the fiscal sponsor may charge. So if a non-registered charity decides to apply for the project with the co-applicant that has a registration number, the fiscal sponsor may charge a fee of up to 10% of the total grant. And this is the maximum. But we have not specified what administration costs are required for the project. I think it is up to the grantee to see what is realistic and really meets their needs in terms of supporting this project. Just to make it clear, some of the ineligible expenditures are things that you can expect, like purchase of real property, land or building. When we talk about like financial stabilization or recovery, because an organizations might have general operations loss, for example. So this is not the goal of this fund to help stabilize the organization or purchase property, and also no activity or expenses that have been incurred before the beginning of the project, which is May 1st, can be included in the budget. But if you have more specific questions about the eligible and non-eligible expenses, please feel free to add them in the chat box. So yeah, so I think like for the administration cost, I hope this answers your question. So there's not a maximum amount that is requested, as long as you can show that this really supports the goal of your project. Yeah, so about the ending date of the project, Cindy is asking, what date does the funding end? Is it 1 year, April 30, 2023? Yes. And we know from what we've heard from our different information sessions in the Peel community and from the People's Panel, that 1 year is a very short time frame to achieve some of the priorities and the objectives of this fund. We are really aware of that, but it is a great opportunity that we have to experiment with grant making with the WES Mariam Assefa Fund. So yes, this is really a 1 year funding. Your project can be part of a longer term project. It could be like the first phase of something else that that will carry on with other financial support from philanthropy or from government funding. But yeah, we could be slightly flexible about the 1 year deadline, but this is really the time frame that is expected for the project. Any more questions, Canvia?
Yeah, there's two that just came up in the chat. One reads, how about a project in the path of developing a push notification system through an Android?
I'm not sure I understand. Would you like to unmute yourself, Ran, and tell us a bit more about what you have in mind?
Yeah, sorry, I can't go on camera right now, but if you can hear me well, thank you for asking me for the opportunity. So it's just basically developing an app, a two-way push notification that gives awareness and engagement to the individuals who are marginalized about events and employment, job fairs and whatnot. So I'm pretty sure this something like this had happened in the past. It is a project that's been used in a couple of agencies. I'm wondering if this funding would be able to support such a project. Thank you.
I would say that as long as it targets marginalized immigrants and refugees and help them access employment, that this is eligible. Karen Veer, would you like to add anything to this?
I mean, yeah, as long as the project is grounded in like the priorities that the People's Panel has identified, I don't see why not, but as I think that's like that should be the primary focus of like the development of such a project. There is also a question from Maria that reads, is the funding paid in installments against deliverables?
So when the project is selected by the People's Panel, there will be a grant agreement that will be signed between the organization and Tamarack. And upon the signing of this agreement, 50% of the grant will be paid to the organization. Halfway through, and I think this is part of the frequently asked question, if you want to refer to this, but halfway through, we are planning to have a meeting, like a midterm meeting with the organizations to discuss how the project is going, if there are any changes along the way, what are the learnings so far, what have been some of the early results of the project, just to make sure that everything is on track, and if something has to be reoriented, that we can have a discussion about it. And so after this midterm meeting, another, I think it's 35, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, % of the grant will be paid to the organization. And at the very end of the project, so after the 1 year, we are asking for a final report, sharing the results that you have measured and the learnings from the process. And then the remaining 10% will be granted to the organization. So in terms of deliverable, really, we are hoping for an end of project report, but midterm, in the spirit also of this participatory project, is very important for this funding opportunity to partner with the local organizations so that we can, I don't know if that would be possible to have a site visit. So we won't talk about site visits yet, but at least make sure that the project is on track, and if anything needs to be redirected, that we can have a chance to discuss it. Anything you'd like to add to complete this, Karen Veer?
I guess just a reminder that like many of the questions that you might have as you move through the application questions are online on the FAQ, and we'll try to update them, the FAQ, as more questions come in. So that's a really good document to touch base with as you move through the application. And it also includes a glossary, which goes over the language that we've used when putting together the call for proposals.
Mm-hmm. And I said the installments of the payments, I said them wrong. So it's 50% upon signing the grant agreement, 40% halfway through, and then a remaining 10% when receiving the final report. Then again, if any organization has specific needs, this is something that can be discussed as well in the grant agreement before signing the grant agreement. Anything else? Any more questions? We still have a few minutes. If there are no more questions, I would like to invite anyone that is attending, Jessica from the Peel Newcomer Strategy Group, or members of the People's Panel, or from the Tamarack team that would like to add something before we end the session. Anything we might have missed or that you would like to share with this group?
I think you've done an excellent job of sharing this opportunity with everyone, and maybe just sharing the coaching call dates would be really helpful for people to hear about. And just want to acknowledge all the work that Tamarack has put through Miriam and Karen Veer in supporting the People's Panel, and also providing a forum like this in Peel for Peel-based and Peel-serving organizations.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you for the ongoing support that you have provided to this project as well. Can we put in the chat box, Karen, the 2 dates from the coaching call? And these are open coaching calls. So you have the Zoom links already provided in the application guidelines. So you can just drop in at any time. So during the hour, you can just drop in, ask your question, drop out. This is really like an open to all Q&A and coaching session. And just as a last reminder, the deadline for application is March 9th at 5 p.m. So we are really looking forward to receiving your applications, and before that, to discussing with you during the coaching calls. Feel free to reach out to Karen Veer or myself if you have any questions about the project. I didn't see my colleagues from the People's Panel or from Tamarack. Anyone else wanted to add something before I close this meeting? We're good. I see Najma is there. Thank you for being there, Najma. You're always there. We appreciate that so much. And I want to thank all of you, like whether or not you decide to apply to this funding opportunity, you are all working in the workforce development or the immigrant and refugee settlement sector. And we highly value the work that you are doing for immigrants and refugees in the Peel community, and we want to acknowledge that. So thank you very much for your interest in this funding opportunity, and we look forward to reading and hearing from you. Oh, I see Efat has a last comment. Last word for you, Efat.
Yes, sorry, just something came to my mind. And it might be stupid, but just I want to say it. I think with this unknown territory that we are living every day, and with the COVID and everything is changing, would it be so nice, Mariam, and your group, young generation of funders who are going to decide, what is the, who gets what? Can you come up with some contingency plan? Just in case for the outcome, delivery, you don't have to tell us, but you have to have some sort of contingency plan. That if something happened, then you say, what if something happened, what we do? So this kind of, it's up to you that, whether it's an outcome based or the delivery, the just length of it, and then what's going on in Peel, because we don't really know. And I think that's a great idea that, from now on, anything we do, anything we decide, we should have a contingency plan. Mm-hmm. Just in case to say, what if?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. We will definitely take on this suggestion of a contingency plan in those very uncertain times. And we are also very aware that the community sector at the moment is like feeling exhaustion with all those repeated waves of the pandemic. And we also want to account for that and the flexibility we have around this project. So thank you for bringing that, Efat.
My pleasure. Sorry for late question.
I see Najma. Are you waving, Najma? You want to say something?
I want to just respond to, is it Efat? As a panel member, because I think that was something we did talk about at length in the panel conversations that we had in the development of this. We used the COVID context. And I think that's a reality check that we need to consider as service organizations and institutions and employers, that's the reality and it's the new norm. And so then I think when you look at projects and you start to think about systemic change and look at the priorities, I think what we need to think about is how do we support immigrants and the target group in the work, in the context of workforce development and the priorities as outlined in the guidelines within the current context, because this is a context of change and innovation. And so that contingency obviously is there in terms of the thinking and the submissions and the design of what you do. And that's also the opportunity from an innovation point of view, but always framing it within the context of the guidelines and the priorities. So I think that's a very valid question, but it was a very valid consideration in terms of not the traditional grant making and process that you're used to in terms of your traditional submissions that you make to funders and federal, provincial, whatever. So obviously this is an opportunity to think outside the box and to look at ways of changing in the current context, but the timeframes are pretty tight in terms of the 1 year and 20, the timeframe from that to April 2023, as I understand. So that is probably being reflected in the application submission and questions and framing it, and it's up to you to think about that and know and design and put something forward that you think will have the impact that is being desired through this process.
Thank you very much, Najma, for adding these very important points. I really appreciate this. So yeah, I think this is a perfect closing remark, Najma. So we will leave you there. Thank you so much for all the great work that you are already doing for the Peel community, and looking forward to pursuing the discussion with you on the coaching calls. So have a very good rest of your day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.